Ontario's first Francophone Lieutenant Governor will officially take office this morning. Edith Dumont will be installed as the personal representative of the King during a ceremony at Queen's Park, which is already underway. This is live pictures right now. Now, she served personally as an educator and a community advocate. Dumont will replace Elizabeth Dowdeswell, who has held the post of Lieutenant Governor since 2014. And for more on this installation of the new Lieutenant Governor, we are joined live by CTV political commentator Scott Reed. Scott, good morning to you. And so we're just taking a look at these live pictures now as Edith Dumont and her two daughters are being brought in by horse and carriage all the way to Queen's Park.
All the way to Queen's Park.
It's an exciting day.
It is an exciting day, you know, and if you like pomp and circumstance, if you are a celebrator of our constitutional monarchy, then you will be terribly excited today. It's been 9 years since Ontario had a new lieutenant governor. Elizabeth Dowdeswell been in the position for a long time, and you know, I noticed that Dowdeswell, her office released the fact that she'd attended 6,000 events since she took over the office. I did the math, like. Let's assume we're not even just talking calendar business days. That's like 2-3 events a day.
In all 125, I believe, ridings.
124 ridings right across the province, which means that she's been in every corner and every crook of the whole province of Ontario.
She was very thorough indeed. So let's talk a little bit more about Edith and who she is, and Miss Dumont, as we noted, an educator, an advocate by her profession, and now taking on a great role, I'm sure a great honor for her as well.
Yeah, so a couple of things about her. First of all, she's the first Francophone lieutenant governor. We've had 30 lieutenant governors. Dumont's our 30th. And we've never had a Francophone. We've never had a Franco-Ontarian. I was surprised to learn that. Fourth, female, and you know, all four of them served in the 21st century, you know, so that's continuing a little bit of a tradition going on there. But yeah, her background really is as an educator, particularly Francophone education across the province of Ontario, Eastern Ontario, then coming in Toronto. She's got a really strong resume, someone that's been active at the community level and really helping to increase the profile of Francophone education.
Yeah, it's wonderful as far as the representation goes. And you were telling me, as far as a fun fact, perhaps viewers may not know this, but when it comes to the lieutenant governor, it's not the premier, that is, who appoints the lieutenant governor. Yeah,
not that a lot of people spend their time, you know, obsessing about these things, but sometimes people can be forgiven for thinking, well, it's the province. The lieutenant governor is really, you know, going to approving and signing off on provincial legislation. So you might think that the premier cabinet approves her appointment. No, in fact, it's the Prime Minister appoints the Governor General. Technically, she's actually appointed by the Governor General, but of course at the recommendation, so to speak, of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister picks, you know, like right now, as an example, in Manitoba, you have a former Liberal member of Parliament that's sitting as a Lieutenant Governor, and that was for a long time under a Conservative government there. So it's not the provincial government that makes the pick.
And as far as from, you know, one woman to the next, I think that's also worth noting too, as far as the appointing of, again, from Elizabeth now to Edith.
That's right, and in a fashion that says, oh, well, that's, you know, that's kind of by the by. It doesn't seem that extraordinary. Like I said, we've had 4 female lieutenant governors, all since sort of 99, 2000, in that era. And, you know, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, one of the longest serving lieutenant governors, certainly in recent memory, really loved, you know, like Dowdeswell really struck a chord with people. I think she's got this, I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but she sort of has this regal common touch, if you will. Like, I mean,
a regal common touch. That makes sense, though. I understand.
Well, because
personable.
Yeah, and people love to chat with her. She's a great talker, very personable, but her presence has an air of distinction to it. I mean, she carries herself, and you go, King's representative, Queen's representative, I buy that from this person. So she classes up the joint when she's there.
And you know, and we'll wait, time will tell, of course, how the reign of Miss Dumont. And another thing to point out as well is that, of course, this will be under the representation of the King now, as opposed to the Queen.
It still sounds strange to my ear.
A bit.
You know?
A bit.
I still think of my Aunt Marg, you know, it was like Rule Britannia and had the picture of the portrait of the Queen up on her basement wall. So, you know, we're still getting used to hearing this every once in a while, these firsts. Well, this is the first time we've said she's been summoned by the King and is the King's representative. But that's the world in which we're in. He's turning 75 soon. So,
that's right.
I think one of the interesting things, by the way, I mean, obviously, our institutions and the structure of our government serves us well, stability and all that. I do think if people look at this pomp and circumstance, and I don't know about you, but I find that people have one of two reactions. A lot of people will say, oh, I like that sort of ceremony, I like that stability, I like that sense of tradition. And I think other people go, it's a king now? And the monarch, and this person is, look at this aide de camp has this big fancy sword. Some of it feels like it's a little bit antiquated, and I think there's going to be an interesting discussion going forward as people say, like, how are we wearing the monarchy as a country now that the Queen is gone?
That is a very good point. If you were just joining in, we're taking a look at live pictures right now. Edith Dumont about to be installed as the next Lieutenant Governor at Queen's Park. So she is now rounding the curve, approaching Queen's Park, where Premier Doug Ford is awaiting her arrival.
There'll be a whole little procession party that will meet her at the steps of the legislature. They'll go in, they'll have a little bit of a meeting, a get together, high five one another, talk about how awesome it is to rule the province, and then they will meet at the grand staircase. If you've been to Queen's Park, they've this beautiful, large, sweeping staircase that takes you and carries you up into the legislature, and then they'll proceed into the legislature and we'll have the ceremony itself.
For anyone who may not be familiar when it comes to this specific role, as you mentioned, it literally is a representative of the king now here in the province of Ontario. What else can we expect to see from Ms. Dumont?
So, I mean, first of all, the fundamental role in our, democratic system, obviously, as a Westminster model, is to approve legislation. She'll be handed today, she'll be provided with the Great Seal of Ontario, which, as you stamp that onto legislation, the formalization that now something has become law. So that's the fundamental, that's the, the technical job. The real job, and one which I think, therefore, she's extraordinarily well qualified for, is to be an ambassador of sorts, to be an ambassador for the province, to be an ambassador for our democratic system. So you'll see that she will attend, as did the previous lieutenant governors we're talking about, acres and acres and acres of community events. And she'll be visiting schools, she'll be visiting anniversaries, and she'll be seeing troops and all sorts of things. I think every lieutenant governor is a little different. Every governor general is a little different. They all bring their points of emphasis. What charities will they support in particular? Where will they overwhelmingly appear? I think it's a fairly safe bet, given Edith Dumont's background in education, that she's going to bring a real emphasis both to her role as an educator and administrator in the education system, and obviously trying to emphasize the Franco-Ontarian fact.
And typically, what is the relationship like between the lieutenant governor and the premier?
Usually terrific. I know, I did a lot of work with Premier Kathleen Wynne. I know that she loved Elizabeth Dowdeswell. They were good friends. They would chit-chat. There is a ceremonial role there, so they encounter one another quite often, and they'll bump into each other at events a lot of the time. So, they tend to have good relations, and Doug Ford is, he is a populist premier. He is hey, if you're standing in front of me, I'm shoving my hand into yours and saying, hi, how are you doing? So I expect they'll get along very well. And one of the things that the lieutenant governor also tries to do is steer clear of pure politics. So they'll emphasize things and causes and issues that are dear to them. But what you won't see is the lieutenant governor saying, I don't like what the Minister of Education is doing. I don't like some of the budgetary decisions that have been made.
Despite her background.
That's right, and you will not see that. Instead, it will be a celebration of the importance of education, the importance of our schools, the importance of the Franco-Ontarians, but you won't ever see a lieutenant governor breaking ranks with the government of the day or offering criticism of their priorities.
Okay. And as you can see, she remains up on the carriage procession as they are approaching ever so closely now. I believe they're very close now to the front steps of Queen's Park. The Speaker of the House, as well as Premier Doug Ford, awaiting the arrival of Edith Dumont, as she will be installed as the next Lieutenant Governor of Queen's Park. As you noted, the fourth woman to hold the position.
Yeah, and today's really, for those that really are interested in this stuff, in a funny way, this ceremony is unique. It's sort of two in one. Obviously, it is the installation of the new Lieutenant Governor. She was appointed by the Prime Minister. He made the announcement in August, so we've been in what they call a period of transition. But it's also, the second function of today is a farewell to the existing Lieutenant Governor. So people will be saying formal and ceremonial goodbye to Elizabeth Dowdeswell after her 9 years.
Is there any connection between one Lieutenant Governor to the next? I mean, is it something that, do we know any connection between Ms. Dowdeswell and Ms. Dumont?
I'm not. I would be shocked if they haven't bumped into one another. If Elizabeth Dalzell is doing 6,000 events over the course of the past 9 years and occupying herself heavily with a lot of community events and a lot of education events. So lieutenant governors are often seen at schools. They'll often speak to school children. So I would bet that they bumped into one another. Unlikely that there's any sort of any kind of formal link, but they've been working together. There's obviously professional staff, and they've been working together for the past number of months since August to try to figure out, okay, how do we pull this off? And Dumont will probably be using Elizabeth Dalzell as a source of advice, going, so what's the day-to-day like, and what should I make my priorities, that sort of thing.
There she is, shaking the hands of the House of the Speaker. There's Premier Doug Ford shaking Edith Dumont's hand.
And you see representation of Indigenous leaders. There will be an Indigenous element to the ceremony today. There are a handful of obligatory elements to it. She has to take the oath of office. She has to swear allegiance to the King. She's presented with the Great Seal, which she then hands right back to the Minister of Consumer Services. But she's adding in, as you will, a little bit of personality of her own. So some of the elements of the ceremony that we'll see in the main chamber of the legislature will have been designed and put together at her request.
And by her side is one of her daughters as well. And so, as you mentioned, the formalities, the shaking of hands taking place right now on the front steps of Queen's Park this morning. The official carriage procession got underway just before 10:30, so about a 10-minute ride up to Queen's Park.
Yeah.
And here we find ourselves now.
Not too many of us get to take that ride, in a fancy carriage with the dude with a big golden sword, and you circle Queen's Park and then come up the main entrance. It's unless you're a visiting school class, the main entrance isn't used. I mean, I worked at Queen's Park off and on for a number of years, and you're always using the east or west entrances, as they call them, for staff. So it's also sort of special to see those big main doors thrust open wide.
Absolutely. And as you noted, those doors are about to be thrusted open any moment now, and you can see she is walking into Queen's Park this morning. Just an overall, though, beautiful ceremony. But I like that point you mentioned, Scott, as far as perhaps if you are the regular Torontonian going about their day on this busy Tuesday morning, how much importance is this in the lives of a day-to-day Torontonian or Ontarian?
Very few people are going to pull their car over and say, oh my God, I just heard there's a new lieutenant governor. I've been shaken to my timbers. But, in the sense that it is a peaceful, an uneventful in many respects, notwithstanding the pomp and circumstance, but an uneventful transition within our democratic system, it's an important thing because it reminds you that we have these stable institutions of democracy and power.
Absolutely. Okay, we will end on that, but we will have more coverage of Edith Dumont being the first Francophone lieutenant governor taking office as of today, live in Queen's Park.